Hey, everybody. This episode is all about trust at work. And in the episode, I talk about how self-trust is the foundation for all trust in others and others' trust in you. I break down a trust formula that has 4 parts to it, which I think you'll find really interesting. And I share how I think we can begin to build trust within ourselves by using that formula. So let's dig in. Let's talk about trust at work. I'm going to start at the end, i.e., the moral of the story, and then we'll work our way backwards on this subject. Here's the moral. When we don't trust ourselves, we can't trust others, and others can't trust us. Trust is an inside-out game. If we don't trust ourselves, our judgment, our abilities, and our worth, then that lack of trust seeps into every interaction we have with others. Now, I can hear you and see you nodding your heads because I think that this logically makes sense, right? And yet, we struggle with fully trusting ourselves and then wonder why we can't do things like influence, or why maybe our team doesn't respect us the way we want them to, or why we have peers or colleagues that are constantly questioning us. Now, I'm not saying it's all on you. Sometimes those behaviors are the result of the environment that you work in. But since this podcast can't solve for the environment that you work in, we can only look at what you have control over, which is yourself. We're going to stick with that sort of line of logic, okay? That when you don't trust yourself, others can't trust you, and you don't trust them. A lack of self-trust creates a ripple effect. It weakens our confidence, which then affects how we engage with others, and then it impacts how they experience us. But when we do trust ourselves, when we trust our voice and our instincts and our ability to navigate challenges, we can naturally create space for trust to flow both ways. So now let's start to work backwards on this. There are 3 primary forms of trust. The first is the trust that we have in others. The second is the trust that others have in us. And the third is the foundation for the first 2, which is, you guessed it, self-trust. And we are responsible for the level of trust that we have in ourselves. No one gives us an ability to trust in ourselves. That is our personal work, our personal growth. So let's walk through how this kind of breaks down. First, when we don't trust ourselves, we're second guessing our decisions. It makes us look hesitant and inconsistent. We might seek out too much external validation. I don't know if you've ever known anyone who is like that, but they're always looking for, hey, what did you think? How did you feel? Did you like it? Was it okay? It's a constant need for external validation, and it can get tiring, both for the people who have to validate them and for the person who's seeking out the validation. It can be really tiring. But that behavior makes it hard for people to rely on someone's judgment. And when we don't trust ourselves, we might also avoid taking risks, taking chances, speaking up. And that can make us look disengaged or even unreliable. Because of that, we can't fully trust others. If we don't believe in our own instincts, we might assume that others are unreliable too. We can project our insecurities onto others, expecting them to fail us. We micromanage. Do you know anybody like that? Or try to control because we don't trust others to do it right. And we can struggle to open up and to be receptive to different perspectives, to be vulnerable because we don't want to feel exposed and we don't want other people's perspectives and ideas to expose our own self-doubt. So we don't trust ourselves. Because of that, we can't fully trust others. And then others fully can't trust us. See, people can sense hesitation. They can sense self-doubt and inconsistency, making it hard to follow your lead. If we don't trust others, they feel it, and they won't open up or collaborate fully with us. When we're not grounded in self-trust, we send mixed signals, and it can make us look unpredictable and unclear. Trust is a 2-way street. If we aren't willing to extend it, we don't receive it in return. But we can't extend it until we have trust in ourselves. When I trust myself, it doesn't matter what happens around me because I trust that I have my own back. I can choose to change the situation And if I can't change the situation, meaning maybe I can't change my company or my boss, then I can choose to leave. So let's talk about how we build trust in others and how others build trust in us. There is a formula. It's a trust formula. And I really love this formula. There are many out there, but this one happens to be my favorite. And it's by a guy named Scott Halford, who's he's an author and a leadership speaker, and he has a 4-part trust formula. The first part is reliability. Basically, this just means you do what you said you're going to do. If I told you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And if I can't do it for some reason, because life happens, then I communicate with you and we create a new agreement about it. So at work, the simplest of reliability moves is that you keep your meetings. You don't reschedule constantly. You don't show up as chaos and say that you're so busy and things are so crazy that you can't follow through on your commitment to others. You don't cancel your one-on-ones with your direct reports, at least not every week, and say, hey, we don't really have anything to talk about, so let's just cancel. Or I'm so sorry, I have other priorities today. I have to cancel on you. And we definitely don't email 2 hours before a deadline just to say, hey, I haven't gotten to this. That's just showing up as chaos. It is. And I'm sure that you've done this. And I know that when I was in my corporate life, I absolutely did it. And we can really convince ourselves that there's good reason for us to be busy and to cancel and not show up as reliable when it comes to our meetings, or maybe other things too. But let's just use the meetings as the example. It can make sense. It's like, oh, I have so many things I have to do, and this really isn't that important, so I'm just going to cancel. Look, that sends a message. It sends a message that you can't get your shit together. It also sends a message that the person you're meeting with is not important. It's showing up as chaos. I had a direct report years ago who showed up as chaos, and objectively, she was good at her job. Let's just say things eventually got done, and they got done pretty okay. But the journey to get there was a total torturous pain because there were missed deadlines, lies, excuses. She didn't show up. I constantly had to chase things down. Our clients had to chase things down. She never did what she said she was going to do. And I did not trust her. The second element of this formula is consistency. Kind of similar to reliability, but a little different. It simply means that your actions match your words. It means that what you say, you do that way. I don't say one thing and do another. I don't tell this person one thing and this person another thing and then go do my own thing. My actions match my words. I'm not having conversations and then back channeling after the meeting to do something else. That's inconsistent. When someone's actions don't match their words, trust breaks down fast. And I can see this in very well-intentioned people. They're also known as people pleasers. They say the thing that they think others want to hear because they don't want them to feel disappointed in them. They don't want people to be upset with them. They want to be liked. It's just too uncomfortable to have a moment of friction with someone. So they make promises or they say things in ways that just aren't true. And then the delivery doesn't match what they've said. Something's always a little different, always a little off. They've just missed the mark. It's never quite exactly how they explained it. And that inconsistency is an instant trust breaker. I had a friend for a long time who was absolutely a people pleaser. And look, this is not a crime. No one's taking you to jail for people pleasing. All right. I want to be clear. Like, this is something that people do because it's a behavior that has shown up, that has shown to be some sort of coping mechanism or even survival technique for them at some point in their lives. And then it just becomes a habit. So please understand that this is not a people pleasers are bad moment, but it's something to notice because this friend would constantly say things to me that I think she thought I wanted to hear. She would praise me, but kind of overly praise me and gush. And I just felt like the words aren't really matching what I think you actually believe. And so I never really believed in her praise. I never actually took it to heart. And I didn't go to her when I needed a little bit of cheerleading because I didn't believe she was being consistent. So if you're someone who identifies as a people pleaser, and most people pleasers know that they are people pleasers, so they're willing to say, yes, I totally do that. This might be a moment to start to take a little bit of an inventory and ask yourself how that behavior, that inconsistent behavior, might be affecting how people trust you and whether or not they trust you. So there's reliability, there's consistency, and then there's credibility. This is really about whether or not people believe that you know what you're talking about. And this can come from things like education or years of experience. But people need to believe that you know what you're talking about. You're not just pulling stuff out of your ass to fill in the space and try to make yourself look good. And look, we know people who do this. They sit in meetings and they just talk and talk and talk. And it's just sort of empty words just to fill the space and try and make themselves look smart. That is not credibility. But the thing about credibility is you don't have to have all this education and experience to be credible. You could also be very thoughtful and authentic when you don't know something and say, I'm going to go find out. That is credibility. A person who takes the time to go work something out, to go research the answer, to go play with something to see how it actually works before they put it into practice. That creates credibility. So if you're newer in your career, or maybe you've switched careers and you're sort of, building a career from your next phase of life, you have credibility as long as you are willing to go and find answers, as long as you are willing to think about things before you take action. That's a behavior of credibility. It's not just about your experience and your certificates and your education. Those help. But I'll tell you, I've known some pretty educated people who went to Ivy Leagues, and I still didn't think they were credible. Just saying. Okay, so then the fourth piece of this is my favorite piece, which is benevolence. So there's reliability, consistency, credibility, and benevolence. This is the degree to which we care about others. And this element is something that sets this trust formula apart from the many other trust formulas I've seen out there. When people know that we care, it makes them want to trust us. And I mean authentic caring. I don't just mean, hey, how are you? How was your weekend? And sort of asking that as like a habitual question to check it off the list. I mean, actually taking the time to see the person in front of you. You don't have to solve their problems or sit with hours of conversation about what's going on with them at home. This is simply the behavior of seeing a person, knowing that they are having their own experiences in things, and maybe being curious to ask how they're doing, what they need, how they're feeling. This last piece of benevolence can be hard because it means we have to get out of our own heads and give other people the benefit of the doubt and slow ourselves down to stop and see the people in front of us. If you're a manager, it might be really easy for you to just tell your direct reports how to do something. Just go and do this. Okay, you're doing this and you're doing this, and you're just a masterful delegator and everybody has their marching orders, but you could actually be leaving some things behind, like the possibility that someone doesn't have the information they need. They feel a little insecure or uncertain about the thing that they're doing. You might be overlooking key signals and signs that they're struggling a bit and need some support. Those are real moments where you could be of value to them if you tapped into some benevolence. Caring about people, their well-being, their success is benevolence. And it can look different in different ways for different people. We all show care in different ways, but you know when someone cares. People feel that, just like they feel your inconsistency, they feel your empty words. People feel that, and they make judgments about who you are and whether or not you're trustworthy if they sense that you're bullshitting them. So when you put these four things together, the reliability, the consistency, the credibility, and the benevolence, you can start to really build trust and gain others' trust. And when others show you these behaviors, you will probably be more willing to give them your trust. So let's put this into context. Again, with trust, it's a two-way street. Your trust in them, their trust in you. And when you have those, you have more ability to build relationships, enhance your own productivity, as well as your team's productivity, and build your influence and your visibility in whatever environments you are in. Without trust, you have very limited ability to do any of that. You're just kind of getting by on the the odd success moment, or the fact that folks don't know how to give you feedback, or maybe you're just getting by because of your privilege. Something to think about. So this trust that we have in ourselves, let's get back to this for a moment. The trust that we have in ourselves informs the trust between us and others. Trust in yourself means you trust your judgment, you trust your intuition, you trust your voice, you trust your point of view, you trust your ability to make decisions, your discernment, and you trust your ability to stand alone, particularly when no one's agreeing with you, and you trust in your worth. That is critical. Trusting in our worth, particularly when someone disagrees. But when we believe in our worth, we spend less time micromanaging our team because we trust them, and we can spend more time being benevolent and helping them grow. When we trust in our worth, we spend less time worrying about how much we say in meetings and if we look smart and how it makes us look, and more time asking questions to add real value to conversations. We spend less time rushing from thing to thing to thing and checking things off our list, and more time choosing where we're investing our time and energy. We can say no more easily when we trust our worth, when we believe in our worth. We can set boundaries, and we can be discerning about where our time is best spent, and we'll be more okay if others aren't happy to hear our no. Ultimately, when we trust ourselves, we spend less time proving ourselves and more time being ourselves. I want to say that again. We can spend less time proving ourselves and more time being ourselves. You know, one of the questions that comes up a lot in coaching is around influence. How do I influence? How do I influence my leaders? How do I influence those around me? How can I get people to listen to me? And I usually answer a question like that with a question. Well, how much do you trust yourself and your point of view? Like on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the mostest. How much do you trust yourself? Because if you don't, good luck influencing. Influencing is about how effectively you shape and share your perspective. If you're not trusting of your ability to do that, and you're not trusting in your point of view as being valid, influencing will not happen. So how do you build trust in yourself? Well, the trust formula I gave you actually can work on you. You can start to build that trust within yourself by using those 4 elements. Ask yourself, how reliable are you to yourself? How often do you commit to doing something and then do it? Are you following through with your self-commitments, or do you fail on doing that more times than not? Well, if you're failing and you're not being reliable, it's hard to trust yourself. How consistent are you being with yourself? Do you say one thing and then do another? Do your words match your actions always? Or do you have a thought and then you go and do something else even though it doesn't match your thought or your belief? How credible are you to yourself? Are you always going off of a hunch? Are you sort of reacting to things versus, being thoughtful and responding to things? Or are you actively looking for answers, or are you telling yourself lies or little stories to make yourself feel better? Where's your credibility on a scale of 1 to 5? And again, the benevolence piece is my favorite. How benevolent are you towards yourself? How much do you care about yourself? How kind are you to yourself? How much do you give yourself the benefit of the doubt? If you are anything less than 5 for any of these, it's hard to trust yourself. It doesn't make you a bad person. And look, I can fluctuate on these scales depending on what I'm doing. I'm certainly not sitting here saying, hey, I'm a 5 and you need to be a 5. No, I'm not saying that. And also, this scale is arbitrary, just so you know, it's not scientific. I'm just giving you a tool that you can use to reflect. That's all this is. But if you are falling short of being able to confidently say, I am reliable, I do what I say I'm going to do. And if I can't do it, I communicate about it. If you're falling short of that, if you're falling short of your own credibility or your own definition of credibility, it's something to look at. And I promise you that it is affecting how others see you, because it is affecting how you see yourself. Building trust within ourselves is work. It takes honesty and diligence. And we have to look at ourselves and ask if we're being reliable and consistent and credible, if we're caring. It's all a choice. Everything's a choice. We choose not to be reliable. We choose not to be consistent. I know that anyone listening is probably like, I'm totally trustworthy. You can trust me. Like, we all want to believe that to be true about ourselves. And I think we all have really good intentions around it. I know I do. But I know that there are people floating around in this world that for one reason or another might not trust me. I can't guess why, because I can't make up stories about people, but I am a human being. I am imperfect. I have to believe that there's someone who's like, I don't know about that, Zovig, right? Because I did one thing one time, or, showed up a certain way in a certain situation in life. And that was what they took of me. So I know that you also want to consider yourself very trustworthy and worth other people trusting you. And if I were to ask you, do you trust yourself? Most people will say yes, because we want to believe that. But when we really dig down into it and look at these elements as sort of a calibration tool for how much we trust ourselves, you might be surprised at what shows up if you sit down and take an honest inventory. Okay, so where we started was, if you don't trust yourself, you can't trust others, and others can't trust you. This might explain why you have certain experiences at work if they're not congruent with how you believe your relationships and experiences and maybe career are going. But trust at work is critical. Just like we can actively choose not to trust people, they can actively choose not to trust you. So I ask you, what choices are you making about how you build your self-trust? That's all for today. We'll be back in another 2 weeks with another episode. Until then, take good care of yourselves. Lots of love and big energy.